Okay. Welcome. I'll let people in as they join. So thank you for joining us. So tonight we're going to be talking about communicate to connect for busy parents. Um, as parents ourselves, we understand how difficult it can be at times to stay connected. And also many people just never learned or didn't have opportunity to learn strategies that can be very helpful to communicate. So we will be talking about practical strategies. And as part of that is recognizing our own needs, expressing concerns without blame, and listening effectively. So see if I can, there we go. So to get the most out of this workshop, this time is for you. Nobody's forced to be here, so thank you for joining us. And we know how hard it can be to carve out time for ourselves. So just showing up is a win. So as Shirley said, feel free to turn your camera off if that's more comfortable, to get cozy, to interact, or just to listen, whatever feels right for you today. You will get more out of it by engaging in it in the content. However, we understand lives are busy and everybody is coming from a different space. So we're just glad you're here exactly as you are. So my name is Amber. I'm a registered social worker. I have a group practice based in Barrie, Ontario. And over 15 years experience as a social worker. My specialization is perinatal mental health. So I do individual therapy in pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond. And I have on there, I enjoy helping people after difficult births. I use EMDR and do a lot of trauma therapy. I'm a mom with two little girls, and we live on a farm and have a whole bunch of animals. So it's a busy space. Um, so I'll pass the mic to Shirley.
Hi everyone, my name is Shirley. I'm a registered social worker as well, and a couple therapist. It's been more than over 10 years. I work with like individuals and with couples. I would say my heart, I really enjoy working with couples with young kids, especially the transition years from starting a family, transition to postpartum, and then with the years, right, parenting young children. Most of my clients, right, are on this walk of life. And I have a good practice called Relationship Counseling Toronto. It's a virtual practice. And I'm a mom of two little girls that keep me very busy. And I'm really excited to be sharing some really practical, communication tips with all of you tonight. I can go to next slide. Yeah. So tonight we'll be covering a few things, right? To learn to like recognize your needs to avoid resentment. And a lot of my couples talk about how do I express a concern to my partner without blaming or criticizing, and how to listen and feel heard. And also developing like daily habits, right? To stay connected and to really building a strong foundation, a strong friendship with between you and your partner. The next slide. Oops. Amber, maybe next slide. Sorry, I don't think I can go to the next slide. So I want to share with you, meet this couple, Miriam and Jake. So it'd be like the challenges they go through would be like quite similar to all maybe most of us, right? Miriam and Jake are parents with two young kids under 5. By Thursday night, they everyone is exhausted. Emma will snap. You are always, Miriam will always snap, right? You are always late and I'm doing everything alone. And then he will fire back, right? I'm working to support the family. What more do you want? And then they will both go to bed feeling really unheard and disconnected. Neither of them want to fight, right? They just didn't know how to say what they really needed. So for us to think about, right, what do you think she really want to try, what she really want to say to him? What do you think Jay was really feeling? So something to think about, right? But as we learn about different communication skills. Next slide. So some common communication challenge as parents after kids, right? There's a huge shift in our role from being partners to co-parents, right? And there's, of course, right, like the obvious, right? Lack of time and exhaustion, very exhausted. There's no energy, right? A lot of time my couple will say, like, I'm just so tired at the end of the day. I know that's important for us to connect, but I just don't have the energy. Some of my clients also said just really afraid of like conflict, right? So we'll be avoiding talking to each other. And a lot of conversation become like very transactional. Feel like it's all about logistics. What's for dinner? Who's picking up which kids? Right? What we doing this weekend? Like really revolving around schedules, right? And logistics. And of course, right, parenting different parenting style can really be a big factor as well in terms of the communication challenge, right? Especially when there's also different culture, different upbringing, different values, or even different faith as well. And some of the communication breakdown I see often, right? Feeling like, unheard, right? Or a lot of blame or like criticism and defensiveness as well as like shutting down, right? Those are all actually based on Dr. John Gottman, right? It's the four horsemen. Have you ever heard about it? There are four predictors, right? Predicting like relationship breakdown and also like divorce. And based on John Gottman's research, right, about two-thirds of couples, right, their marital satisfaction like decrease, right, after having kids. So this is all very normal. And the good news is that we can learn, right, communications strategies, right, and skills to break those patterns.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why we start with ourselves. So self-awareness is key to communicating because if we're not aware of our own needs, it makes it really difficult to connect with other people and for other people to connect with us. So if other people aren't sure of the message that you're sharing, it can also be because we're not sure about what we need. So when we're not sure how to ask for what we need or why we need what we need, we often stay silent, or we hint, or we're passive aggressive, assuming that the other person can read our minds when really we're not even sure ourselves. Um, we know that when our basic needs are not being met, reactivity follows. So we tend to have our emotions activated when our basic needs aren't being met. If we're tired, if we're hungry, if we're not feeling connected, if we don't have a sense of belonging, those are just some examples. And so being able to name what our needs are can prevent resentment. It brings clarity to your relationship. So taking a pause and asking, what do I need? Or why is what's happening bothering me can go a really long way in helping you to communicate that to somebody else. So common barriers to self-expression. These are also really important as the ground for communicating. Many people weren't taught to identify or express their needs growing up. If you never heard or saw your parents modeling that, then you don't know what it looks like. I think schools are a little bit better now, but for a lot of us, that wasn't something that happened regularly. So if we didn't see how other people did it, then we don't know how to do it, but also we don't know that it's important, that it's a skill to be able to communicate what our needs are. Shame or guilt are really big, especially with the moms that I tend to work with. This idea that I shouldn't need that, I shouldn't have to ask for it, or I'm a mom, I shouldn't need time away from my kids, so I can't communicate that to my partner, or I shouldn't feel trapped being at home. Or justifying our needs. So I'm exhausted, but I'm a mom, so it doesn't matter. So paying attention to the shame and guilt, the emotions that are activated when we think that what we need isn't justified. Trauma, quite common. So it doesn't have to be big T trauma. It can be little T trauma. So we're not talking about something like a fire or a car accident, we're talking about past invalidation, neglect in childhood, fear of abandonment or rejection. Maybe as a child, you learn that when you express needs to your parents or adults around you, that you were dismissed. You were not allowed to take up space. You were not to be heard. So you hear of, adults now that we're told as kids, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. So crying as a child is expressing something, a need isn't being met. And so past trauma can frame that for a lot of people. And so asking yourself, when I was younger or throughout my life, have I ever asked for something that I needed and felt rejection or invalidation, or even shamed for asking for something that I needed? Fear of conflict is quite common as well. I think most people can agree with that. Avoiding a disagreement at the cost of your needs. I can't handle conflict. I shut down. We have patterns of how we respond in relationships. And if you don't feel that you are justified in asking for what you need, if the other person has a history or a pattern of being aggressive, or if you've just never been exposed to conflict, or if the conflict you were exposed to was unhealthy conflict. And so there's an automatic connection in your brain that if there's conflict, then I'm not safe, for example. So those are some reasons why many people avoid self-expression. So I just want you to take a moment to reflect. I'm not expecting anybody to share this out loud, but if you have any questions or reflections on this content, please, you're welcome to drop it in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on that. So when was the last time I expressed a need clearly? Because for some people, that might be never. So thinking about, is there a specific instance where you directly asked for what you needed? Maybe you were in a job interview and your mouth was dry. Were you able to say, can I take a moment and get a glass of water? Again, that might seem like something minor, but for many people, they don't feel they're able to ask for something that they need. Maybe it was asking a partner or someone to watch your kids tonight so you could attend. Was that a big deal? Was that something that you were avoiding doing because of what you were expecting? So what held me back? So considering barriers that prevented you from expressing your needs. Was it an assumption? I like to tell families that you can always ask. Other people have a right to say no. So what held you back? I should probably not be giving you all these hints because I do want you to reflect on this yourself. And how did it feel? If you can think of a time when you expressed a need clearly, what held you back? What delayed that ask? And then how did it feel when you asked? Reflecting on your emotions before, was there anxiety? During? Was there worry? After? Relief? Just some examples. So I don't know if anybody wants to share any part of that or if there's any questions that are coming up. Just checking the chat. I know sometimes I can talk fast. Okay. Think about it. We can always come back to this. And this is also an exercise you can do on your own. So maybe you want to do a screenshot. Could be a journal prompt as well. So building self-awareness is not only important, but it's also a really big component in other aspects of our lives. So as I said, to be able to communicate, we need to have that self-awareness. To be able to access the world in a way that is most fulfilling, we need to be more aware of what we need. So values check-in. I recommend doing this. Maybe not every year you could, but every couple years anyway. And after any major transitions in your life, whether it's due to health, expanding your family, or losses, moves, changes of jobs, knowing what matters most will guide you and your boundaries and communication. Especially I find when a couple has been together and they're expecting their first child, doing a values check can go a long way in mitigating postpartum distress. I really like the VS Strengths character strengths assessment, and I can drop that link in the chat or with our handout, share that. It's a quick little quiz. It's like, I forget how many questions, but it takes about 15-20 minutes. And it'll help you to rank your priorities and values. Do it with your partner, compare. Because when you know what's important to you, it's easier to say no to the things that aren't. It also guides you to prioritize your time and to communicate more clearly. Body cues, super important again. So noticing, does your chest get tight before you ask for a need? Or maybe that's a sign that you have a need that's not being met. Clenched jaw, irritability, also signal unmet needs. We hold distress in our bodies. So please listen to what your body is sharing with you. Emotion mapping. So feelings are information. Emotions are actually activating or motivating signs for us. So with the example there, anger might signal a boundary violation. Frustration, what's going on with that? Irritability. I know they're all on the same spectrum when we think about anger. From irritability to rage, there's your spectrum. So if one of those, one of our needs is not being met, then often it comes out in anger. Or if we have expectations of ourselves, others, or the world, and those expectations are not being met, again, that spectrum of anger shows up. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling worried before you talk to your partner, what are your emotions trying to tell you? Are they trying to tell you that you don't feel safe? Are they trying to tell you that you have a schema of the world where you have this automatic fear of rejection if you express your needs? We're not going to go into where this all comes from, but there are reasons why emotions show up. So even naming them, just name them, that can help you to better understand what your needs are. And patterns. So noticing when you go quiet or lash out, listen to your nervous system. So with your partner, if you find you're avoiding certain conversations or certain times of the day, or if there's patterns to themes, pay attention to that. It may just be before you go into that conversation, you're going to pay attention to your body. And if you're already feeling heightened and anxious, it may not be the best time to clearly communicate. I think I saw a question. Okay. I hate asking for help because most of the time I get rejected or I feel like a burden even asking. Very common, very, very common. And I appreciate your insight. So even knowing that can go a long way. We're going to talk more about this, but recognizing that and being aware that nobody is a burden. And I could talk about this for a long time, but giving yourself permission to always ask, what's the worst that could happen? That's a common sentence I say with clients and myself. What's the worst that could happen? They might say no. So what? So follow up the what. What's the worst with so what? And then recognizing that you can handle whatever happens. And then also, what are the chances that you'll get rejected for asking for something that you really need? I like to say, again, I use this with myself. If somebody rejects me for something that I need, then I need to reevaluate my relationship with that person because there may not be mutual respect or we may not have values that are in line. So the relationship may be shifting and that's okay too. So I know that's a short answer to that point, but I do want to say thank you for sharing because those are both very good points. Okay, I'm gonna pass it over.
Thank you, Amber. Right, it's really important to look at like the barriers, right, of us, and really great question, right, about feeling like the fear of feeling rejected or feeling like a burden. So those are really good reflection for all of us. So I'm going to talk about a very practical skill, again, based on Dr. John Gottman and Julie Gottman's research. Um, it's called the gentle startup. Like we mentioned earlier, right? How can we bring up a concern without sounding like we're criticizing our partner? So gentle startup is basically a way to express your feelings and your needs without blaming or criticizing, making it easier for your partner to listen and to respond positively. So the formula, like I say, formula is three parts, right? The first part is I start with like I, right? It's like I feel and then the emotion about a situation and I need, right, a positive request. Sorry, it's at the bottom of the slide, if you can see that. So start with I, right? Focusing on your feelings instead of like blaming. For example, I feel really frustrated or I am disappointed, right? I'm really sad, right? Those are like feelings. Naming the situation, describe the situation as neutral as possible with the fact, right? Not your interpretation, just, or judgment, right? Just the describe it neutrally. And then, to offer a specific request, right? What you need, right? And I will say more about the need. And can I go to the next slide? Why it's important is that conversation that begin with criticism or blame or frustration often trigger defensiveness and escalate conflict, right? And a gentle startup help in fighting cooperation instead of conflict. So some tips about gentle startup, like what I said earlier, right? Really using I language instead of you, right? Or like often we might say like, oh, you said you're gonna pick up the kids and then you're late, right? Something like that, right? Might start with you, and then like you didn't wake up again for the night feeding. I'm always the one doing that, right? So really be mindful about using I language and try to express your emotions without blame or judgment. Again, expressing your feelings and rather than a thought. So I feel disappointed rather than like, I think, I think that this will never change. So that's more like a thought. So trying to focusing on the feelings, focusing on the specific request, your need, rather than what your partner did or didn't do, right? Like I need, us to keep to, I need us to stick to the bedtime routine, for example, right? That's a need, rather than like, well, I really don't want our kids to be so tired, right? To focusing on a positive need. Keep your tone really soft rather than accusatory. Next slide. So I'm gonna give a few examples. Hopefully that would be helpful. So instead of saying I need you to stop complaining or like I need you to stop scrolling on your phone, the positive need would look like I need to hear more appreciation from you. I need to feel, that we are present, right? That we're connected as a team. So that's what I mean by positive need, right? Instead of saying like what your partner did or didn't do. Like maybe your partner like, make a mess, right, around the house, right? But you said, I really need our home to be tidy so that I can relax. So that's a positive need. Next slide, thank you. So again, some example, right? The first one, like you never, like this is a harsh startup, right? You never help me with the baby at night. I'm exhausted and you don't even care, right? A more gentle startup would look like I'm feeling really drained from the night feedings. Can we figure out a schedule, right? That can work better for both of us. So starting from like how I feel really tired, I'm really exhausted, right? The situation is at the night feedings. And then the need, right? I need to, right, schedule a time that will work for us. That's the need, right? So it's not like talking about the other person, right? You didn't even care. Example two, right? Another example, right? A house startup, right? Why do you always let the kids stay up late? You never stick to the bedtime routine and you're throwing everything off. So I know that sometimes when the emotions are high, right? When we're exhausted, it's so easy, right? To say something like that, right? Very, very common, right? And we're all guilty of saying things like that, right? But again, right, a gentle startup would look like I'm feeling really anxious, right? My feelings. When we don't stick to the bedtime routine, and here using we, right? We as a team, we don't stick to the bedtime routine. Because I noticed that, right? The kids are more tired and cranky the next day. It would be really great, right? We could work together to create more consistent bedtime. So that's the need, right? The positive need instead of what they did or what they didn't do. Yeah, because we're saying that like, oh, you never stick to the bedtime routine. That's what they didn't do. So like I don't know, maybe the next one. So like a group practice here. I don't know with the group practice here. So I want you guys to think about, right? Try to transform each of the following statements to gentle style. If anyone would like to try, if you're comfortable, like, like for example, number one, right? Stop spending so much time on your phone at the dinner table. How can we change that to a gentle startup statement? Anyone want to try? Stop spending so much time on your phone at the dinner table.
Anybody want to pop in the chat how you might say that if you're not comfortable sharing on screen?
I can help.
Thanks, Catherine.
Um, I feel ignored when you're on your phone, and I really just want to connect and talk to you.
Excellent. Yeah, really great, right? I feel ignored when you're on your phone, and I would just really like to connect, right? A positive need. Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you, Catherine. Then any other thoughts from everybody else? From anyone else? We can move to the next one. Why am I always the one planning the weekend family activities? Would you like to give this a try again, Catherine?
Sure. Oh, I think someone put it in the chat.
Oh, sure. Oh, sorry, maybe I missed that.
No, yeah, just. It says, I feel overwhelmed with the task of planning weekend activities. Can you help, please? Can you please help?
Great, awesome, right? Like I feel tired, right? I feel overwhelmed, right? Planning the weekend, family activities. Can you help, right? Really great. The last one, right? You never help out around the house. But these are often complaints I hear a lot from my clients.
I feel overwhelmed with all that has to be done around the house. And I was really hoping that we could find a way to work together to get things done.
Great. How does that feel like? Would you like to share, Catherine? By the way, Catherine is my student at Relationship Counseling Toronto. Maybe I just can quickly introduce you. Maybe Catherine, is it okay if I ask you, what does it feel like? I don't know about you. I'm sure when I'm like stressed out, tired, like I'm a bit sick right now, I'm sure I say something like that too, right? It's just so easy, right? What does it feel different? Like to like be really slowing down, really checking with myself. What am I feeling right now? What's my need?
Yeah, I think for me in situations like that, it actually allows me um to process what's happening in my own mind. So instead of like, because I mean, I think we can all do that, right? Like even with the kids, you aren't helping right now. Come and help me.
Mm,
Instead, if I'm able to say, mommy has a lot going on right now. It would be
mm,
really nice if you could come and help and we could do this together. You just feel better. You just feel better
yeah.
being able to communicate your own needs in a more
Mm,
effective way. Yeah.
yeah. Right, right.
Common.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love what you say about like even this communication with our kids too, right? It's also modeling. Yeah, before our call, like our workshop today, I also have a couple, right? And we're going through their childhood history and saying a lot of us, right? We do not have that modeling. And we have to learn in ourselves, right? How do we communicate in a way that is like we're honoring our needs, like what Amber was talking about, but yet it's still effective, right? Instead of pushing our partner away, right? Or like that we might get even more hurt, right? That we feel like rejected or they shut down. Great, awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. Anybody else would like to share? Or just hearing the differences, into Any difference for you? Okay. If not, then maybe I'll move on to the next part. Um, I don't know if, oh, maybe not here, not in the slide. I don't know if any of you is with your partner, but maybe because of time, I'll skip this too. Just thinking that maybe tonight or tomorrow when your memory is still fresh, maybe try to think about a recent situation where you feel like you could have communicated differently, more gently with your partner, and then using this formula, right? I feel the emotion about the situation and I need. Right? Just remember the need is a positive need, not something they did or they didn't do. That's the part, right? It's very easy to forget, right? Yeah. And we have a handout after to share with you, so I can use that as a guide. So the next communication skill that I would like to talk about is active listening. So I guess in a way, probably a lot of us are very familiar with this, maybe have heard about active listening. What it really means is where like we can be fully focusing on our partners, their words, their emotion, and the meaning, right? Without distractions, without interrupting, judgment, like trying to persuade them or being defensive, right? It really help your partner to feel heard and understood. So let's say your partner, right, is being able to use gentle startup, right, as gentle as possible with their feelings and their request. And then in a way, right, is the role of the listening partner to be able to really listen, right? Not just hearing the words, but to really listen. Right, that can will also really prevent conflict. So why it matter is that like when the stress is so high, like I said earlier, right, often we listen to respond, not really to understand. And when we feel unheard, right, let's say again, right, the point being like able to be use gentle startup, it may lead to resentment and feeling creating emotional distance. So active listening really help de-escalate conflict and to also strengthen the emotional connection. So there are three key elements, right, of active listening. The first one is reflecting back, basically summarizing what you need, what you have heard, and to confirm your understanding. Like often ask my couples, right, in the session, right, we don't always do that, but like checking with your partner, this is what I'm hearing. Is that correct? Am I understanding correctly? Is there anything else I'm missing? Right? And number two, right, to validate the feelings, to really acknowledge their emotions without trying to change it, trying to fix it, or trying to dismiss it, right? One example would be like, I can see why you're frustrated. I get why you're upset, right? Or simply repeating their emotions, right? I hear that you feel really overwhelmed. So number three, asking clarifying question, right? If needed, right? To ask like, can you tell me more about that, right? What do you mean that you are overwhelmed? Can you tell me more about that, right? I would like to understand you're feeling disappointed. Can you please tell me more about it, right? Or how can I support you? So these are all three key elements of active listening. Amber, next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll go talk about the tips, right? So two tips, right? Be active listening to give full attention, put away distraction, put away your phone, making eye contact, and again, right, avoid being defensive or being dismissive, focusing on the connection. So some examples here. For example, when one partner say, like, I feel overwhelmed with all the housework, I need more help. So the one long active listening response will be, well, I'm tired too. And we can change that to, I hear you are feeling really exhausted and overwhelmed and need more support. Let's talk about how we can divide things and, have a better balance for both of us. Next slide. Um, Yeah, so I don't know if any of you have your partner together with you, but these are the steps that you can practice with your partner, right? Think of a recent situation, right? Or a stressor, right? And then talk about that for 2 minutes, right? Maybe something that's not about your partner, something a bit more neutral, maybe about your work, right? Maybe yeah, about your work, about the kids, something else, right? And then step two, the other partner only listens, no interrupting, no problem solving. And step three, right, the listener reflecting back what they hear, and to validate, to ask for a clarifying question, and to switch role. So I don't know if we can give you a few minutes if any one of you maybe have your partner with you that feel like you can do that. Or if you don't, maybe if anyone of you want to share maybe an experience where you can think of an experience where maybe like how you could use active listening. Maybe your partner shares something with you and you realize that, right, oh, maybe I could have listened differently. Thought. Maybe I can share one example, like Friday. I remember like there's a public holiday. My husband has been asked to a meeting, because like a regional meeting, like in the middle of a holiday, a state holiday. And my initial response was like I like in my mind was like kind of upset. Right? It's a time we can spend time together with some activities planned. And then I kind of checking with myself, he didn't want that either, right? He didn't all want to have to work on a holiday either. So I'm like, instead of like, reacting, I try to tell, "Well, how can I, like, I hear that you had to work, and that sounds really frustrating and felt like you don't have control of your schedule as well, right? Being called to by your boss to go into this meeting like 3 hours long on a state holiday. And yeah, and that sucks, right? That sucks too for you, for our whole family. Is there so let's talk about, how we can make the best use of that day. How can we make it work, right? So I find that in those moments, right, I had the temptation, the impulse, right, to like get upset as well, right? So yeah, that's one example I can think of right now.
I can share another one.
And
I use this activity with clients quite often, actually, or encourage them to do it with their partners. But I know for me, at the end of a long day, in our roles, there's a lot of listening. And my husband, he tends to work alone most of the time in his role. And so he'll, word vomit. That's not what I mean, but like he wants to talk at the end of the day and I'm done with listening. And so I've learned over our relationship that he deserves, well, not that I've learned, but he deserves to be heard. And so using these tools of listening to what he's saying and reflecting back what I'm hearing versus feeling like I need to respond. Um, and that goes a long way, because otherwise it's, oh, you're not even listening to me. You listen to the people during the day, but then at the end of the day, you're not listening to me. So, which is a fair argument. So being able to listen to the words and reflect back what I'm hearing. And as you said, like pulling out if there's emotions or his own reactions to what he's sharing versus feeling like I need to be more of an active participant in the conversation. So I find that does go a long way, especially when we have when there's young kids and we're distracted and there's so much going on. When your partner is talking to you, to be able to hear what they're saying and reflect back that you're hearing them, that gives moment opportunity for connection that otherwise could be lost.
yeah. And on that, thank you so much, Amber, for sharing that, especially when you talk about the end, the last part, right? When there's a lot of distractions around, right, with young kids or with kids in general, even teenagers. One thing I often suggest my couples to do when I said earlier about building daily habits, right, is to like carve out. I say I'm only asking for 10-15 minutes, where it's like no distraction, and you can be creative about it. After the kids go to bed, maybe get up before the kids wake up, maybe in the middle of the day to call each other during your lunchtime, during your break. But there's a time where you really like, just focusing on each other. You're not talking about relationship problem. You're not talking about logistics. Just like, how's your day? What's been on your mind? How can I support you? And that's where you can really use active listening, right? Like, oh, that sounds like really hard. That sounds really frustrating, right? You're not providing solution or problem solving, just listening, right? Just validating and ask clarifying questions, right? Oh, so what do you think you're gonna do, right? What does your what do your coworkers think? You're just showing that you're engaged, right? That you care, that you are curious, right? And this is a big part in terms of like building friendship, right? Because a lot of time with life being so busy, right? Exhausted after putting the kids to bed, it's so easy to just look at the phone or turn on the TV, right? Just like being mindless. But I always say, right, that 10, 15 minutes every day, investing in building those habits and friendship is a lot less exhausting than fight, than conflict. Right? Having my clients always tell me, right, so tiring, so exhausted, right? Then you may not be able to fall asleep. You are feeling like even more grumpy the next day, and then more of like the vicious cycle. So those are the daily habit, right? I say 10 to 15 minutes a day, right? And we might not always happen, right? So if you shoot for every day, hopefully 70% of the time it can happen. And in the beginning, we might have to schedule it or put on, a reminder, right? And then also really important is like daily appreciation. Just like really noticing things that your partner do, right? And showing appreciation and be really specific about it, right? And also how it impacts you, right? I noticing that like why you empty the dishwasher even though it's my turn to do it tonight. That's so helpful, right? Because I'm really exhausted. I would just like to sit down and relax and enjoy the cup of tea. So it might be feeling really small, but I think that's like all this small moment that really add up to your relationship bank account. I know a lot of time people say like don't sweat the small things, but now that being married for almost 10 years with two young kids, I actually think that the small things do matter. And that's what I believe, right? Like showing up to your partner is small in small moment, right? Where you show up, you care, you practice active listening. You're like, I remember you have this meeting today. How did that go? I actually told my husband I have this workshop, right? Like, and I know it means a lot to me. If he message me, like, I want to know, oh, how's your workshop, right? That means a lot. It's also always those small moments that building the connection. And when there's communication breakdown, which will happen sometimes, right? You have a lot more positivity to draw from in your relationship bank account. So anybody else may have anything want to say? We can move to Q&A. Yeah. Or any questions, any feedback?
I just wanted to add a point to all the things you were saying, Shirley. Sometimes in relationships, those little things can feel maybe like unnatural at first to say something like, thank you for asking me about that. I appreciate it. But something I've learned over the course of my relationship is that the more you say it is the more natural it becomes. And then, sometimes there's a partner who's maybe not as versed in being able to express their feelings, but the more that one of you can, it starts to draw that other person to do the same. And then the language between you becomes a little bit more expressive. So I just wanted to say sometimes practice makes perfect, I guess, or not perfect, but practice is better than sometimes it takes practice.
Yes. Thank you so much, Catherine, for bringing this up. Right? We may feel like, well, do I really, a lot of my clients say, well, Shirley, do I really need to thank my husband or my wife to like put dishes away for changing the diaper? But like we do that with other people. We thank the cashier, even if it's their job, but we don't do that for our partner. I think just adding that positivity, the being kind and noticing, right? Yeah. I mean, of course, right? Sometimes there's a lot of mental load going into different household tasks that could be for a whole different workshop. Yeah. Uh, sorry, Amber, I think we'll skip this part. Yeah, this one before. Any other questions or feedback from the group?
Again, feel free to pop any questions in the chat.
Yeah. Yes. Does it feel like this might be difficult to practice or to implement? Any maybe initial reactions, thoughts about what we talk about?
I know everybody learns differently, so hopefully you don't have to rewatch the recording, but we will be sending out a short handout uh, with this information in a different digestible information. So yeah.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, we hope that is helpful for you.
Hang on, there we go. Pop that slide up as well. If anybody is feeling shy, not wanting to ask any questions here, there is our contact information.
Yeah, if you'd like to contact us and to hand out this information as well. Yeah, if you feel like want to speak to us individually, if anyone is interested in therapy, we do offer, I think, Amber as well, right? We have free 15-minute consultation, right, to get to know us better. But we also hope that like with this workshop, right, you get to see how, like, I guess some of our values, our approach, how we work with our clients as well. I see there's some question from Angie.
How to get your partner to talk
Mhm.
tired and zoning out on their phone, which I think is a common concern, which we had the same thing.
Yeah, I think it depends the situation. Is it because I work out like what Amber share, right? Maybe because their job is like really like after they feel like talk out all day, right? By the end of the day, or or is it because there's some emotional disconnection or even conflict? And maybe when did it get started, right? Again, right, depending on the situation. And that's why often I encourage my couples, I don't, just like 10 minutes, right? To rebuild the friendship. Like, how's your day? Is not talking about the relationship problem. I feel like people, especially couples who have been very disconnected or in conflict, they need to experience, right, positive interaction to want to talk to each other. If in the past, right, all the conversation has been negative, right, full of even though not intentionally, right, blame, right, attack or defensiveness or shutting down, like the fourth horseman that Dr. John Gottman talked about, right, people naturally don't want to engage in conversations, especially if one partner is more avoidant, right, to avoid conflict. I hear that very often. So I would say like to have like some small conversation first, but if like your partner really don't want to talk, I think like one option would be having a third person, right, to help with that process, right, to bring it up to really understand what are some of the deeper issues or core issues. And then maybe finding time that your partner is more able to connect. Like I said earlier, right? Could it be in the morning? Could it be calling each other during lunch break, right? If that's possible when they're not as exhausted. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds really difficult. Yeah, it's very hard, right? Because we cannot change the entire relationship ourselves. Yeah. Amber, in case you have any other input in terms of Angie's comment.
I really like what you said, so I'm just gonna like maybe reframe it a bit around we can become so preoccupied with the problem. And so addressing the problem without having that connection can lead to more conflict or more discomfort. So as Shirley said, focusing on connecting and listening and the positive interaction rather than hyping yourself up to have a difficult conversation. So as she said, like little pieces here and there, maybe it's not how was your day, but what are you looking forward to this weekend? Is there anything you want to do together? I really like how you did X, Y, and Z. And um, why don't you come upstairs with me? We could put the baby to bed together or something like that. So focusing on not toxic positivity. You're not like ignoring the negative, but you're focusing more on opportunities to connect, if that makes sense.
And I know that sometimes, right, it feels very unfair, right? To feel like why, like, because we also probably have our own hurts, our own pain and resentment, to feel like, why do I need to do this first, right? Because it's vulnerable, right? It feels very vulnerable to take the first step because we also really, nobody wants to get hurt, right? Especially if we still feel like the partner is so important to us, this relationship is so important to us. It's a very, very vulnerable place to be. And that's kind of like what Amber say, right? He might not be ready for conversation, right? But maybe just like showing you are taking the step, right? Oh, I know. Oh, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for doing that. How's your day? And just keep it short. Oh, yeah, I really appreciate you telling me. Just like to celebrate every small step, right? But of course, right, it might feel unfair. Why am I doing all this work, right? And it does feel like that. I try to really validate that. And I don't know, maybe Amber, have a better way to reframe it. I don't always say that if we are the partner who has more awareness and we care, we want to repair, and we might have to focus on like taking those first steps instead of waiting for the other person to start because we want it to work, right? And maybe feeling that I get to do that, right? Instead of I have to do that. Yeah, but I understand it might feel really unfair.
I was even
Yeah.
thinking, as I think the point of the workshop was also for busy parents, right? So we're all parents, and recognizing that a lot of these skills go a really long way, not only modeling for our kids, but using with our kids. So it's going to feel weird anyway. So why not practice with your partner? And so even like from a mastery perspective of like, oh, I really noticed that you did this, or, just I noticed. And just, it's like narrating your life by noticing things that are positive or not negative, I should say. So maybe they're neutral, but I noticed that you filled the gas tank up when you went out, or I noticed that, and maybe the adding the thank you or I really appreciate it feels too awkward right now, but that's what we're building up to. But again, those are really good skills to be using with our kids too. Like, I
Yes.
noticed that you got dressed on your own today. I noticed that you put your toys away after you finished playing with them. That's so great. And we're not like praising them for everything they do, but we're expressing that we're noticing, and then they're
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah, to feel seen, right? A sense of feeling seen. Yeah, but Angie, thank you. I think it's Angie. Thank you for sharing this. I imagine it's a very difficult place to be, but if you feel like you'd like to speak to either Amber or myself more, feel free to reach out. Yeah. And thank you for the other participants' input as well, for being so encouraging to each other. That's what we need, right? We need support from each other. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. There will be an automatic email that we're sending out with the worksheet and our contact information if anybody has any questions. And the recording of this will be uploaded onto Empowered in Health on the Mighty Network. So you can also access it there, maybe share it with your partner if they're not with you right now. But yeah, we appreciate you taking out this time on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, thank you so much for your participation. Yes. Have a good rest of the evening. Bye-bye.